Salve omnes. This is our video for chapter 36. We have two cultural readings, a letter in Latin, and then the frontier life, Helga spinning about the German frontier. Now our grammatical concepts, we'll have a quick little note on Roman letter writing, and then the two major ones are Roman systems of dating for the days of the month, and also how they dated the years, and then the use of Quam. So here's our checklist: Roman letter writing, how they made introductions with SD and SPD, Roman dating systems for the days of the month, the colons, nones, and ides, ablative time when, if the day fell on those special days just mentioned, the terms prettiae and ante diem, what it means to count inclusively, and also the names of the month. And lastly, the four special months are July, March, and May, and October. When talking about the years, there's two ways the Romans determined their year. One was by naming the consuls, like something happened in the year of the consuls, and the other was called the AUC ab urbe condita years, which date back to 753 BC. Prettiae, not to do not refer to years. And lastly, the use of quams. Quam in comparison means than, with a superlative as blank as possible. In exclamation with an adjective / adverb means how, like how wonderful to see you. In a question, it means like how beautiful was that rose you smelled. And in a relative clause, it's the feminine accusative singular whom, referring back to a feminine singular noun. Now, when writing letters, the Romans used the nominative case for the person writing or sending the letter, and the dative case for the name of the person who was receiving the letter. In addition, in the same sentence, they would use either the abbreviations SD, which stands for Salutum Dicet, for sends greetings, or SPD for Salutam Plurimam Dicet, sends fondest greetings. Here's an example. For example, if Cicero were writing Caesar a letter, he would most likely write Cicero, that's a nominative, to Caesar, that's a dative, Salutem Dicet, sends his greetings. We do have a fair amount of letters that do survive from the Roman period, from Cicero and from Pliny the Younger, most notably. And in those, there was no real signature or way to end a letter like ours, sincerely or respectfully. So they would just say vale, usually, farewell. By the way, for our terminology, PS stands for postscriptum and afterwrite. Okay, so here are some major terms that have to do with Roman dates when we're talking about days of the month. Calendae, calendarum, that's always feminine plural. And what does that mean? Oh, you're right. It means the first of the month. The calends, where we get our word calendar from, was always the first of every month. The term originally was used for the new moon in a lunar calendar, then later was transferred to mean the first of the month. All right, the second major term is the nones, or in Latin, the noni, nonarum, also feminine plural. What does that mean? Right, the nones usually fell on the 5th of the month, except for our four special months, July, March, October, and May, when the nones fell on the 7th of the month. The third and last point or special day of the month from which the Romans assign their dates is called the Ides. In Latin, idus iduum, that's also feminine plural, and it belongs to the fourth declension. whereas Calendae and Noni belong to the first declension. Now the Ides usually fell on the 13th of the month, except for the 4 special months. So for 8 months of the year, it fell on the 13th, except for July, March, October, and May, when the Ides fell on the 15th of the month. And when was the most famous Ides? Right, the Ides of March in 44 BC. So the 4 special months are July, March, October, and May. Maybe we can call that J-Mom to remember, or Mom J, or in order MM Joe. If you think of a better mnemonic device, please let me know. So again, they are July, March, October, and May. And again, during these months, the Nones falls on the 7th day of the month and not the 5th. And the Ides falls on the 15th day of the month and not on the 13th. Now, one of the uses of the ablative is something called the ablative of time when. And this is going to come into play only when referring to when the date we're talking about is actually the Calends or the Nones or the Ides. Okay? So not the day before the Calends, Nones, or Ides, or 5 days before the Calends, Nones, or Ides, but just use the ablative when the actual day falls on the Calends, the Nones, or the Ides. Any other day of the month, we'll have to use an accusative construction. So here are some examples of ablative time when. Calendis Juniis would be June 1st. Nonis Juniis would be June 5th. And Idibus Juniis would be June 13th. Here are some other very, very common ablative time when expressions. Please pause the video and determine the meaning of each of these expressions. Well, how did you do? Well, nocte is the word night in the ablative, so it means at night or during the night. A variation of that, by the way, would be noctu, but they both mean at night. Eodie is on that day. Prima luce, at dawn, or literally at first light. Aestate, in the summer or during the summer. Eo ipso tempore, at that very moment or at that moment itself. Eodem, from the word for the same, means on the same day. Die Saturni would be on Saturday. Quinta hora, at the 5th hour. That means 11 a.m. if you are counting 6 a.m. as the first or the beginning of daylight. And then tribus diebus would be in 3 days. Another very important term when calculating the date of the month is the word predie. What does that mean? And what case is always followed by it? Please pause the video before advancing for the answer. Right, predie means the day before. And it's the day before one of the 3 special dates, the Calends, the Nones, or the Ides. And after, it's followed by the accusative case, not the ablative. Some examples are predie calendas Maias, literally on the day before May 1st. So that should read not April 1st, but April 30th. And then predie idus Martias would be on the day before the Ides of March, or March 15th, because that's one of the special months. An important thing to remember in calculating the date of the month is that the Romans counted inclusively. So that means you must include the special day, right, the Calends, the Nones, and the Ides, and then count backwards. See the next card. So if you have some numbers, let's say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and you counting inclusively, 10, we would go 10 minus 6 equals 4, but in counting inclusively, you consider the first and the number, and the last number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 numbers included in the whole equation. So that's kind of like what you have to do when counting inclusively with a calendar. Let's discuss the other main term, ante diem, often abbreviated to AD, before we discuss counting inclusively again. Here are some examples. Ante diem, row number 4, calendas decembres. What date do you think that is? or ante diem VIII, that's 8, idus martias. What day do you think that is? So the term ante diem is used for all other days of the month. So other than using calends, nones, or ides in the ablative when the date falls on one of the calends, nones, or ides, or the term prettie. So most days of the month will have the word ante diem. Like prettie, it is followed by the accusative case and not the ablative. And use a Roman numeral with the expression ante diem. You could use an ordinal number, but Roman numerals are a lot easier than that. One caveat, the Romans never used the word secundum, for second, to agree with ante diem. They subtracted from one of the 3 dates, the calends, the nones, or the ides, moving from prettie to tertium, and then to quartum, etc. So if we go up here, March 15th would be called the Ides of March, idibus martis. March 14th would be prettie, the day before the Ides of March. But March 13th would be called the 3rd day before the Ides of March, again counting inclusively, 1, 2, 3, 13. Or backwards, Ides 2, 3. Here are the answers to what I just asked you in the previous card. The 4th day before the calends of December is November 28th. And the 8th day before the Ides of March is March 8th. Okay, let's review how to express dates in Latin. Number 1, if the date falls on one of the specially named 3 days, use the ablative case. Calendis Januaris on January 1st. Nonis should be Octobribus, would be October 7th. And idibus Decembribus would be December 13th. Number 2, prettie is followed by the accusative, and that means the day before one of the 3 specially named days. So prettie idus Augustas would be on August 12th, or the day before the 13th of the Ides of August. Prettie nonas Novembres would be November 4th, again the day before the nones of November. And then for most days, you're going to use ante diem, abbreviated AD, plus the accusative again. Alright, so ante diem, Roman numeral 5, calendas Aprilis. That's the 5th day before the calends of April, so March 28th. Counting backwards, you go calends of April, and then March 31st, March 30th, March 29th, and then March 28th. That's 5. Ante diem 3, idus Junias, would be on June 11th. Or it's the 3rd day before the Ides of June. Remember that when you're using the names of the months, they are used as adjectives. And so here are the adjectives in Latin and what they mean. So Januarius aum is of January, and the 202 means it's a first and second declension adjective. Notice that April has a 3 next to it, so that is a 3rd declension adjective. So that will have 3rd declension endings, but May and June have 1st and 2nd declension, and the rest on this page. And if you look at this page, the July and August are both 2-on-2 adjectives, 1st and 2nd declension, and then September, October, November, December are all 3rd declension adjectives. This card is a little trivia card on the source of the names of the months in parentheses. Originally, below this line I'm drawing now, these months had to do with numbers. Quintilis for 5, sextilis for 6, September 7, October 8, November 9, and December 10. That was in the original order of the numbers, where December was the 10th month of the year. That meant that March was originally the beginning of the year, and March, of course, is named after the god Mars. We're not quite certain about April. It could be named after Venus from an Etruscan pronunciation of Aphrodite, where the aspiration is dropped out. So you get april from there, or from the verb aperio, to open up, like flowers opening up. But we do know that January is named after the god Janus, who is the god of beginnings and transitions. A little bit more trivia. Roman calendar was originally based on a lunar calendar of 10 months. Luna, of course, means moon. January and February were added later and moved to the beginning of the year in 153 BCE. So that, again, March was the first month of the year. Julius Caesar, in his role as Pontifex Maximus in 46 BCE, revised the calendar, which is very similar to what we use today. Now we need to talk about how to determine the actual year. Before we do that, we need to talk about the terms AD and BC. AD means Anno Domini. It does not mean after death. Anno Domini is an ablative of time when, for Anno, in the year of, Domini is genitive, of our Lord. It is a Christian system of dating years, which is now often rewritten as CE, which means of the Common Era. BC does mean before Christ. Obviously, it's also a Christian term, which is now often rewritten as BCE, which means before the Common Era. The first system we're going to talk about is called the consular system for dating years. Since the Romans elected 2 consuls annually, they often refer to events happening, quote-unquote, in the year when some guy, some dude A and dude B were consuls. So to do this, you must use the ablative case, another ablative time expression, and put the word for the consuls in the ablative plural, which is consulibus, along with the names of the 2 consuls. So here are some examples. Antonio et Cicerone consulibus. Literally, when, that's a good way to translate the ablative of time when Antony and Cicero were consuls. So that equals 63 BC. By the way, consular lists, often chiseled into marble, were displayed in the Forum. And historians, when they're writing in chronological order, would start off a new year by saying this is what happened when so-and-so were consuls. The other way to determine the year is called AUC, or ab urbe condita, which means from the founding of the city. AUC, or ab urbe condita, refers to the traditional date of 753 BCE, when Romulus and Remus legendarily founded Rome. To convert a Roman year, so an AUC year, to our system, follow these rules. If the AUC date is 753 or less, subtract it from 754, that's subtracting inclusively, and you will get the BC date. But if the AUC date is 754 or greater, subtract the number 753 from that date, and you will get our AD or CE date. Please pause the video and give our years for these AUC years. Okay, so here are the answers. I hope you got them. Now notice that the top 3 dates I gave you here are less than 753. So for these, you had to subtract from 754. But the bottom were all greater than 754, so you needed to subtract 753 from these dates. Now, if we're going the other way, if we're converting a year in our system into the AUC system, follow these rules. If the year is BC, or BCE, before the Common Era, subtract it from 754. But if the year is AD, or Common Era, add that date to 753. Pause the video and figure out how the Romans would have noted the following years. Here's a key again if you need to use it. Please pause the video and check your answers. The final grammatical item in this chapter are the various uses of quam. There are 5 uses, and they're all review. the use of quam in a comparison means what? And try to figure out these examples. Please pause the video and try to figure them out. So, with comparative adjectives and adverbs, quam is going to mean than. Quam here connects two words in the same case. Marcus est prudentior quam Sextus. Marcus is wiser than Sextus. Notice that Marcus and Sextus are in the same case. In number 2, we have Marcus aget prudentius quam Sextus. This is a comparative adverb. Marcus acts more wisely quam than Sextus. Again, notice that Marcus and Sextus are in the same case. Remember, there is a variation of using quam with something called the ablative of comparison. And in that situation, you don't use quam, and you put Sextus, the second person or thing, in comparison in the ablative case. So here, again, get rid of quam, change the ending on Sextus to sexto, and then supply the word than in your translation. Number 2, what does quam mean with a superlative adverb or adjective? Please push pause and try to figure out the meaning of the sentences below, especially the meaning of quam in these sentences. Right, so quam with a superlative adjective or adverb means as blank as possible. Here are the examples. Scribe, write, quam saepissime, as often as possible, or as often as you can. Canem quam maximum, these words go together. Marcus purchased for Cornelia the biggest dog possible. Okay, here's use of quam number 3 in an exclamation with an adjective again or an adverb. Please push pause and determine what quam means in these sentences. So quam in an exclamation, again, it's joined with an adjective or adverb, means how. So quam, going with molestus, how annoying or how troublesome a boy Sextus is. Or here quam in number 2 is with clariter, an adverb. How quickly your letter, advenit, arrived here. Okay, now we have use number 4 of quam. Again, it's used with an adjective or adverb, but it's in a question. Some of these could be an exclamatory question, but they don't have to be exclamations. So what does quam mean here, as in quam molestus puera sextus, or quam clariter to epistula huc advenit? Please push pause and determine the meanings of quam in the sentences. So yes, quam also means how in a question when it's joined with an adjective or an adverb. So quam molestus puera sextus. How troublesome a boy is Sextus? Well, he's very annoying. Or how quickly did your letter arrive here? In only 5 days. Quinque modo diebus. And lastly, we have quam use number 5 in a relative clause. Please push pause and determine the meaning of quam in these sentences below. Yay! So quam, as a relative pronoun, is the feminine accusative singular, and it means whom, and it refers back to an antecedent that must be feminine and singular. So here in the examples illa epistula quam, quam refers back to epistula, that letter, quam, which you wrote arrived here on November 1st, on the Collins of Novembribus. Okay. Number 2, Cornelia de Flavia quam baiit reliquerat saepe cogitava. Cornelia often used to think about Flavia, whom, referring back to Flavia, she, Cornelia, had left behind in Baiae, that nice little resort. Okay, here we can sum up the uses of quam, the 5 uses of quam. Again, it can be used in comparisons, and it means than. So Gaius is prudentior quam Titus. Gaius is wiser than Titus. Number 2, Quam can be used with superlatives to mean as blank as possible. So in the phrase corre, quam celerime, run as fast as possible, i.e. as quickly as you can. Quam can also be used in exclamations with adjectives and adverbs. Quam ebrius est Titus, how drunk Titus is. You're almost being sarcastic. And quam can be used in a question, again with an adjective or adverb. How drunk is Titus? Again, it could have a sarcastic tone. And lastly, quam can introduce a relative clause. The puella quam videis est amicissima. The girl whom you see is very friendly. Now we have some review questions. Please answer these questions on your review sheets, your worksheets, on a separate piece of paper. Number 1, what are the names of the 3 days of each month from which the Romans reckon their dates? Number 2, when reckoning dates, did the Romans add or subtract from these 3 days? Number 3, are the words callens, nones, and ides always singular or plural in Latin? Number 4, what gender are the words callens, nones, and ides? So masculine, feminine, neuter. And number 5, what part of speech are the names of the months in Latin? Number 6, if the date is exactly on the callens or nodes or ides, what case must be used? Number 7, what special word means the day before? Number 8, what two-word term is used for dates that occur 2 or more days before the callens, nones, and ides? Number 9, what case is used after both pridier and ad te diem? Number 10, the callens is always the blank of every month. 11, the nones is most often the blank of the month, except for the 4 special months. Number 12, the ides is most often the blank of the month, except for the what special months. Number 13, what are the 4 special months which have different dates for the nones and the ides? Number 14, when do the nones occur for these 4 special months? Number 15, when do the ides occur for these 4 special months? Number 16, what is the mnemonic device or saying for remembering these 4 special months? Please push pause and answer these questions. Number 17, explain the consular method of designating years, found on page 89. Explain the case needed, too. Number 18, explain the abbreviation AUC and to what date it harkens. That's a legend, too. 19, rewrite the rules given on page 89 for converting a Roman date into our system of BC or AD. Number 20, rewrite the rules given on page 90 for converting a modern date to the Roman system. And number 21, what does it mean to count inclusively? Please push pause and answer these questions. Now, also on your worksheet or on a separate piece of paper, give the Roman designation for each day in March. I'll circle these special days. Please push pause and convert the following dates that are in our system into the Roman system, and also use AUC years. Now fill in this calendar or the month of April with the Roman dates next to our dates. Push pause. Lastly, convert these AUC dates into our system. Push pause now and answer them on the worksheet or on a separate piece of paper. Walete.